Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, where it's my pleasure to be joined by the one and only Mark Gatiss, a long-time fan of Forbidden Planet. How are you today, mate?
Very good, thanks. I'm still in the laboratory. I should change my background, but it's too late. The Martian.
Yeah.
We are the Martians now.
Yeah. Fantastic background, as we were saying on a previous edition. So there are a couple of things that we've got at Forbidden Planet we'd just like to chat to you about. The first of which is your Doctor Who novel, The Last of the Gadarene. What can you tell me about that and the genesis of the project?
Oh, well, so I did, when Virgin Books got the license to do Doctor Who after it came off in 1989, I was one of the first ones to submit an outline, which became Nightshade, very Quatermass. And then I did a second one. And then the range did very well. And the BBC, in a very BBC move, decided to take it back. The BBC Books then started their own range. But they did something different. They did Past Doctors. And obviously that was, this is a world way beyond the idea of the show coming back. And I really wanted to write a Troughton historical, which I did, which was the Roundheads, and a sort of full-blown John Pertwee tribute, which was Last of the Gadarene. So I'd read somewhere in Doctor Who magazine, there were very early plans for that Roger Delgado would leave with John Pertwee in a sort of Reichenbach Fall scenario. It was called The Final Game or something like that. And I think that lodged a little thing in my head of like, what would that story be? So that's what it became about, really.
Yeah. And what were your thoughts on the Delgado Master? It's the 50th anniversary of the Master this year.
I know. Well, what can you say? I mean, like Doctors, there are lots of different ones now. I'm one of them, and everyone has their favorites, and they all bring something different. I think that I do love that idea about the Master, that essentially, and it took a while for that thing to settle, that of course they should be as distinctive as the Doctors, apart from the fact they're bad, but I think like particularly the idea of Missy's redemption, stuff like that, I thought that was really interesting. But Delgado is the one, of course, and I think I just love that idea. It's a totally lost world casting wise, where Barry Letts would just go, oh, I know who should do this. And, he was a man he'd worked with as an actor. You see Roger Delgado cropping up in Quatermass 2, or he's playing the Spanish ambassador in Francis Drake and stuff like that. But just that, he's just perfect because, of course, he's very other. He's amazingly charismatic, fit as a lop, and, and a brilliant foil for John Pertwee's Doctor. I mean, I know that John was slightly threatened by the Master's popularity.
So interesting, yeah.
Because of course he was. I mean, that's the devil has all the best tunes.
Yeah, of course.
Those scenes they have to get that crackle, and they're so. To this day, I find them so much fun. When he goes to see him in prison, the Sea Devils, and it's just proper human embarrassment. There's a sort of awkward pause, and he says, "Well, how are you?" And he's an intergalactic megalomaniac, but it's like two slightly embarrassed friends not knowing what to say. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I also have quite a fondness for the pantomime villain Anthony Ainley version of the Master.
Oh yeah. Of course.
It's wonderful.
But I remember that. Oh my God! Talk about being a fanboy. The moment at the end of The Keeper of Traken, when the Geoffrey Beaver's version with the Deadly Assassin makeup merged with Treemass, and you just got a second of him looking, and he just says, "A new body at last." I think I just went crazy. Oh my God, yes.
No, it was wonderful. Anthony Ainley corresponded with my mum. She was a big fan of his, and because he'd done that, I remember it being great. It might be terrible, but there was a spy show that we used to watch called Spider's Web that he was the lead in, and my mum was a big fan of that. And there was a particular episode where he was disguised once as an old man. It might be and she figured out it was him in these eras before the end. So she wrote to him, the BBC, and he wrote back to her and carried on writing to her until he passed away.
Oh, how lovely.
What a lovely story.
No,
You know, he was really into cricket, which my dad was
yes,
into.
yeah, he was a proper old fest, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And
he was.
I mean, when you see him, he's in Blood and Satan's Claw, Andrew Bleak, and you can see his mastery in other performances.
Yeah.
He also, you know, he famously wore a wig on a wig.
Yeah, brilliant.
He wouldn't admit to wearing a toupee, so when he had to wear a wig, it would have to be placed on his wig. So therefore, I think that's why he has that funny hat in Castrovalva. It actually just keeps going.
Yeah, it's wonderful. What a wonderful conceit, rocking up inside the makeup chair and doing it. I mean, I don't think even Shatner would go that far, you know, just brilliant. Another project I'd like to talk to you about, Mark, is thank you for that. That was great, actually. And another project I'd like to talk to you about is the Sherlock Manga series, published in English by Titan Comics. What can you tell me? What do you think of that series, and what was the genesis of it?
Oh gosh, I think they just approached us with the idea of doing. Obviously, we knew quite early on Sherlock was very big in what we euphemistically call the Far East. And it just, I mean, obviously they're working their way through them. It's taking a long time. It's a bit like that telex again to the yacht, isn't it? It's like it's becoming like a huge project, a 10-year span. They're very beautiful. And I think there's something always intrinsically quite manga-ish about Benedict's face, which really suits it. So yeah, I mean, they just arrive for our approval every 5 years. But they're very beautiful things. I really like that idea of them occupying a sort of shelf as a unit like that. And also, I guess because we always refused any approaches to novelize the stories because we wanted people to read Doyle. So there is a sort of a literary version, nevertheless.
I think that's such a good observation. I mean, I think they're very beautifully done, and you're absolutely right about Cumberbatch. It's the manga version looks interestingly, arrestingly like him. You know, it's a much closer version of his face than, say, the manga version of Martin Freeman is, which looks like a manga adaptation.
Yeah. But I think it's because he lends himself to it naturally, doesn't he? The sort of angularity, and it's really interesting that. And I was brought up a Marine boy. You see, that's my when I see them.
Yeah.
Is that available? Do you know? Because I haven't seen that since.
I've never seen it be officially released. I know that you can get bootleg DVDs of it. I've seen them knocking around at San Diego, and I think I picked one up once. And again, it's a case of, it's like everything. You know, all the everything you remember about Marine Boy, the Oxygum, all of that kind of stuff, the theme tune, fantastic. You sit down and watch an episode, it's like, oh, okay. I don't think I'm going to be able to watch 26 of these.
They're not everything's like that. I think, because that's the joy, is when actually things are just as good as you remember, or they're sort of stranger. But a lot of the big one for me are the ITC shows. Their title sequences and their music incredible. The episodes almost entirely forgettable.
Yes,
it's a curious thing, isn't it? But they really are. It's like they knew how to hook people in.
Yeah,
and then they're just quite straightforward often.
But the theme tunes are so arresting and quite and have a kind of quite macabre, dark vibe to them. I mean, I think a classic example of that would be Randall and Hopkirk.
Yeah.
The end titles, particularly on Randall Hopkirk, and the imagery of kind of breaking through the void and reaching out, is tremendously, emotionally affecting. But actually,
did you watch Neil Brand's recent show about TV themes?
Oh, I did. What a wonderful show!
And actually, it's so brilliant to have someone like Edwin Astley champion properly.
I agree.
And the fact what those themes did to you is almost like you can't really work out the balance of things that's going on in your head. But something like The Persuaders, John Barry, the show itself is the definition of sort of Monte Carlo fluff, but the theme is so melancholy.
Yes,
and yet it's perfect. What's that about? It's
fascinating, and the title sequence is so affecting. With all the black and white imagery of them growing up in England and in New York, and it kind of really harnesses who you think those actors are in that title
Yeah.
sequence.
Yeah.
It is brilliantly done. I think the absolute archetype of what you're talking about is Department S, which has an amazing theme tune.
Oh.
Just brilliantly affecting theme tune, and it really gets you, you know, right in the heart. And the show, or I think the show, it's the archetypal ITC show because it has a brilliant setup. It always starts with this unexplainable mystery, and then spends 40 minutes giving you the most mundane explanation for that happening.
The one I remember as if it were yesterday is the politician getting into a car in Westminster, and when they open the door, there's a skeleton.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what the explanation is, but it's never as good. But yeah, it's that is an amazing thing. I remember I was filming a few years ago, and it was very hot summer. I remember putting the theme from Department S on, and it was blasting out of my trailer, and people started to flock to, what's that? Because it was like everyone was just in such a good mood. It was like it's just the most brilliant sound, isn't it? But they did a clever thing there. They took the interesting character, Peter Wingard, and then ran with it, you know. But,
yeah, for sure. Although, in fact, Wingard by the time he gets to the Jason King show, that is maybe the most super mundane ITC show ever.
Yeah.
And it's shot on 16mm by that point, right? Obviously, they had less money to play with. I think he's much more interesting in Department S.
That's right. Yes. Show. Yeah. Well, he's much. It's, you know, this is a different discussion, but it's what this is what I call Mr. Humphries syndrome. It also happens with Sue Pollard in Heidi High. A character who's part of an ensemble becomes the breakout character, and then there's too much focus on them, and they lose their charm.
Yes.
Peggy wants to be a yellowcoat, and then she becomes not part of an ensemble, you know. And Mr. Humphries similarly, in those, I can't believe I'm saying this, in the earlier episodes of I Am Being Served, in his pinstripe suit, he's a slightly threatening, very sexual presence. And then suddenly he arrives at work wearing these huge pink hats and stuff, and you go, it's lost something.
It's gone too, because that's right, they take all that threat away from him.
This is the direct link that no one knew there was between Peter Wingard and Sue Pollard.
And on that fantastic note, this has been Mark Gatiss. It's always such a joy to chat with you.
Always a pleasure.
Great to see you. Take care.
Thanks, mate. Take care.
Bye-bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.